Okay. Hi. It's Bella DeVero Foundation. I wanted to talk about this is for my consulting and business coach uh company, and for my foundation also. Um I wanted to talk about boundaries more. That topic is in some of my videos, but I wanted to elaborate on that. But first of all, there's autism spectrum disorder, where they're really high functioning and you can't even tell that someone has traits of it. And then there is the other spectrum of it, or the other end of the spectrum, where you can definitely tell. And part of it has to do with like how much you want to interact with people and those kinds of things. I'm not going to go through all the symptoms of it here, but anyway. And then there's personality uh, disorders, like paranoid personality disorder, or other ones too, like avoidant or dependent, which isn't really the opposite of each other. It's they have some similarities. So anyway, I wanted to bring up the disorders, different disorders, because there are traits or symptoms of them that can overlap with each other or look the same or get confused, or those kinds of things. But the main topic is boundaries, though. So this is for, like I said, my consulting and business coach. If you don't know the difference, there's definitely a difference, but you do a little bit of each for either one of those jobs if you have, uh, if you specialize in consulting or being a business coach. So, if you don't know the difference, get on my social media or the internet somewhere and research it for yourself. But I'll be making more videos on what I actually do and, what that actually means later on. But, for this video though, I wanted to talk about boundaries. Now, first of all, there, um, the topic of abuse is, something that tons of people talk about, tiptoe around, you know, bring up to each other, all of that stuff. They, so many people don't are afraid to accept themselves whenever we're being mean to each other, and we don't want to call it abuse. There's so many things like that that people do or don't do when it comes to relating to each other or themselves. So, for my foundation and my business, for clients, for my business coach and consulting company, I promote unconditional love, first of all, for yourself and everyone, which means that you accept everything about a person, the good and the bad, not just the good stuff. So that requires accepting when someone is being abusive, like verbally or otherwise. I don't mean say that it's right or that it's not abuse. I mean accept the other person being a whole person, because of the fact that everyone on this planet is abusive. And there's so many people that talk about the subject, and it's kind of controversial, because people don't want to give themselves unconditional love. They like to put conditions on themselves and other people and disown stuff about themselves and other people, and, you know, hide, uh, be scared of that word, abuse. It's not nice, but the fact of the matter is, when a person is being mean to another person in any kind of way, that is abuse. That's all there is to it. It's not that, the angelic, whoever, the spiritual teacher over there that is being mean to someone right now, and then comparing that person to another, like, person that is in jail being mean to someone else. If the person in jail is being rude, verbally rude to someone else, that's abuse. If the spiritual teacher is being verbally rude to someone else, that's abuse. It's the same thing. There's no difference, but people like to say that there's a difference because they don't want to, be mean to the spiritual person and be kind to the person in jail, or whatever, things like that. There's so many scenarios where we're disowning stuff about people and labeling people and trying to stick up for people, and not be honest about people doing this and that and the other thing, which is all, when it comes to whether it's mean or not. If it's mean, it's abuse, no matter how little it is, or whether the other person can stick up for themselves, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. So the one thing about this is to get, first of all, number one, we're all abusive. So don't tell me someone's not, because that's a bunch of shit. Because especially once you get into the close to the line of saying someone's not abusive, that in itself is abusive. You, if I'm saying I'm not abusive, that in itself, that's me being abusive. That's emotional abuse. To say that if I'm being mean to you, I'm not being abusive to you, that's emotional abuse in itself. So, or if I'm saying that bully is being mean, but I'm not, that's bullying the bully. That's a bunch of shit. That when people say stuff like that, there's so much of that going on like social media and other places, as like, how angelic do people really feel like they need to be? It makes me speechless. I do not get it at all, why people feel like they have to be so angelic when they're being assholes. It's like, I mean, I, I cuss in my videos sometimes, so if that bugs you, too bad. So what I say to people that are bullying the bullies, or that are saying they're angelic, or whatever, acting like they're not abusive, or those kinds of people, I say grow a fucking backbone, because that's like, really, it's that's low to live that way, and to act like you're not a part of, whenever you're saying that person's being a bully. It's mean to say that you're not a part of that group, the bully group. There's no such thing as this bully group. Every person on this planet is that way. So that's the number one thing that we need to get about this. Now, that's the background of what I wanted to talk about. So what I want to talk about is boundaries. So the thing is, and about belonging, I made a video or two on it, on the subject, maybe just one. There's so many people that like to belong in groups. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a group or even cliques, because there are, and whether they're right or wrong is not the point. The point is, in my video, I talked about we all belong with each other. You are a human being and I am, so we belong with each other. That's all there is to it. And then there's composite charts, which is the fate of two people, astrology, composite charts, which can mean that relating to each other is not a good idea, or it can mean that it could be a good idea, or it can mean that there's some difficult stuff in it and you can work it out if you choose to. The bottom line is that it's a choice. Relating to people is a choice. And so the number one thing, the background of this is what I said. Number two is, which I want to make more videos on, and I'm writing a book about this. I'm writing a book about resistance, but I'm putting the topic of fate in my book. There's no such thing as fate. There's a such thing as choices. And the fact that you want to belong with each other is all right. You and another person, whoever, you and a bunch of other peoples, It doesn't mean that you don't belong with each other because there's no such thing as fate. Fate takes away the ability to choose and the fact that we have free will. Every person on this planet has free will and is not saved from any kind of life. Fate is not a thing. Choosing is. That doesn't mean that you don't know each other for a reason or it's not important, because it is. It's just that it's a choice to know each other. You choose your path in life. It's not given to you. So that's number two, basically. So the number one thing and the next set of stuff I wanted to talk about is boundaries. That's all the numbers there are to this. There's one and two of the background, and then the main topic, there's number one. The number one thing is what boundaries are and what they aren't. So, referring to abuse or not abuse, let's talk about boundaries then. Because of the fact that people want to belong with each other, which is fine, it's a good thing. And then there's fear and inner demons and issues that people have to work out, which is why we know each other. The boundaries thing gets screwed over so much. And people like to have labels like boundaries for each other, put their own ideas on other people. And it's such a big topic. It's like, I could go on about it for days and not get done talking about it. So, a boundary is when you like or don't like something, or, if you want to be hugged right now, or if you don't, if you say no, that can be a boundary, It's not that hugs are wrong, it's that you said no right now, and later on, you might want a hug, which is fine. And autism traits or symptoms or whatever, where the relating to people thing is something to care about, how people are around each other. But these disorders, any psychological personality disorder that I've named in this video or other ones, whether it's comorbid or related to each other, whether it overlaps or whatever, not, doesn't matter. Autism and personality disorders, that's not an excuse for someone to say that person doesn't know how to be around someone else or belong with them. Like, people like to say that, you know, um, whatever, some a girl or guy that has psychological issues or verbally abusive issues of their own likes to say they're different from someone else because that other person's not verbally abusive, which is a bunch of crap because we all are. But anyway, people like to build walls between themselves and other people and say we're all different and whatever. And so people end up using these words, uh, traits or symptoms, what a trait or symptom of something is, how you describe the personality disorder, the traits and symptoms. They like to say those are why someone, but they don't call it what it is and explain it how it is, what it actually is. They they call it boundaries. Having autism traits is not a boundary. Having a personality disorder trait is not a boundary, or if you have the whole personality disorder, that's not a boundary. A boundary is when you say yes or no. Two, here's the thing. You don't say yes or no to abuse. You can, you do, people do, but it's not a boundary. Abuse is abuse, and that's all there is to it. Whether you want to partake in it or not, or whether you don't, is not the point. It's not a boundary, it's abuse. That's it. There's nothing else to it. That's not a boundary. A boundary is when you say yes or no to an acceptable thing. Abuse and personality disorders and autism spectrum disorder, they're not boundaries. They are what they are. Autism or abuse, which is two separate things, which can look alike sometimes, they aren't boundaries. They are what they are. I like other words are what they are. They're not boundaries. Like a, a shirt. It's not a boundary. It's a shirt. That's it. Autism is autism. That's it. Per, uh, Paranoid personality disorder is paranoid personality disorder. It's not a boundary. A boundary is when you say yes or no to something that is acceptable. When you feel like partaking in the acceptable thing right now, or if you don't, that is a boundary. And whether you like it or all the time like something, let's say I like hugs, but I don't want to hug right now. You know, Hugs are acceptable, but it's not acceptable to hug someone if they don't want to hug. That's not abuse. Hugs aren't abuse. But if you force yourself onto someone, that is abuse. So let's keep it separate though. Abuse is abuse. Hugs are hugs. Whether I like hugs or not doesn't matter. Hugs are a good thing in general. I'm sure you know what I'm saying. Hugs are not abuse in themselves. So if I said I don't like hugs ever, which is not true, it doesn't change the definition of a hug. You see what I'm saying? So a boundary is whenever you say yes or no to something that is acceptable. You do not say abuse is acceptable, whether you are being forced into it or partaking in it of your own free will. There obviously is that situation where people do that sometimes, so it doesn't change the fact that it's called abuse. It's not a boundary. I'm calling boundaries yes and no about things that are acceptable. Abuse is not acceptable. You don't call abuse acceptable. It's just not. It's abuse. Like, whenever you say it's acceptable, then it gets into the not abuse kind of a thing. It's not true. It's like there's masochism or, whatever, those kinds of words. It's not acceptable. It's unhealthy. It's not nice. It's not nice to yourself or other people. You know, Abusing yourself or someone else is not acceptable. It's not a boundary. A boundary is when you say yes or no to something that is acceptable. I mean, once it gets forced on you, then it's abuse, and you don't need to call it a boundary then. It's called abuse then. But a, a boundary in itself, I'm calling saying yes or no to something that is acceptable. That the thing in itself, the subject that you're saying yes and no to is part of it. And then the actual boundary part of it is what you own when you say yes or no to it. That's your boundary, you know. But it's not, like I said, it's not to abuse. That's not a boundary. So the thing is that I have carpal tunnel. I have to adjust my phone here. Okay, so just a second here. Let me just. Sorry, my hair is bugging my eye there. Okay, so anyway, the thing is, there's people who talk about further about this, about how people relate to each other. So many people are afraid to be around each other. It's because they don't trust themselves to be around people because they are abusive, for one thing. And because they want to say the other person doesn't know their boundaries. They like to say that what's in me, whether I'm around you or not, that's already in me. It's not your boundary. It's just something in me. Good or bad is not the point. Being a whole person is the point. Accepting all yourself is the point. Unhealthy or not, it doesn't matter. If you're abusive or if you're not being at the moment, verbally or emotionally. Let's not get into the subject of forcing abuse on someone else because it's not the topic for this. The topic is let's just keep it to something we all can relate to, something that we all do. I know there are people on planet who that do not force themselves on people in horrible ways. Like everyone on planet doesn't do that. So let's just talk about the subject of something that we all do. We all are emotionally abusive sometimes to people or verbally. So whenever someone doesn't like to let win or they're afraid to, either one, and then they want to put the subject of boundaries people, and then it's kind of something that, there's something going on. So people are afraid to be around people because they don't trust themselves, because they know that they're unhealthy for them. So they say keeping completely around them. That's one thing that isn't stress on me. No, it makes me get mad because people need to learn to let other people own their boundaries and their confidence and their wanting to be around people and accepting people and giving people unconditional love and all those kind of things. Like if I'm giving you unconditional love and you're being emotionally abusive to me, or if overlapping with autism spectrum disorder traits or some other kind of personality disorder, maybe not. All this kind of situations where it could or could not. But maybe you're being emotionally abusive or maybe you're not. Or all of it, whatever. whenever, you know, you, I'm giving you unconditional love about that, you say you shouldn't be around me, you know, um, people like to, you know, call, you know, unconditional love because they're so afraid of themselves, like being abused, you know. Unconditional love is not ever being abused. It's just plain love. That's all there is to it. And it's unconditional, meaning you accept all the good and the bad and everything else about another person. It doesn't mean you condone it or say it's right or that it's not abuse if it is, or it's not, you know, autism spectrum disorder symptoms if it is. You know, it's not saying that it isn't when it is. It's just unconditional love. It is accepting everything about a person. Unconditional love is not being abused. It just isn't. It's not a boundary. It's not abused. So one part of this is my point is boundaries are not whether you're abused or not. Abuse is abuse. That's it. Boundaries are yes and no to things that are acceptable. So you don't need to say that you getting unconditional love is you being abusive. You are supposed to be around people. Whether you're scared or not is beside the point of what I'm trying to say right now. You're supposed to be around people. I'm not saying you are or that you have to be or that it needs to be a certain amount or that it needs to be without or with disorders of psychological or autism or anything else. I'm saying we are supposed to have people in our lives. It's a healthy thing. So people get this conditional love with this abuse and unconditional love mixed up and call it boundaries and call abuse this and that and the other thing. And, you know, people don't train themselves to get to the root of things and call things what it actually is. You know, all sorts of things, you know. They're so afraid of themselves and don't know how to relate to people and get to the root of things and all those kind of things, you know, that where it's like this thing where you just, you know, going throughout your day where, you know, you're not processing thoughts properly and emotions and whatever else, you know, life properly, you know. And um so people call unconditional love from But or if you're giving me unconditional love and I'm being emotionally abusive to you, or if I'm not trying to be, but I'm looking like I am because I have autism spectrum disorder symptoms, you know, however, you know, all those kinds of things, you know, either or abuse or not, you know, emotionally, but you're the one giving me unconditional love. People like to say that you being unconditionally loving to me is you being abused by me, but it isn't. It's you owning you and your boundaries and your confidence and that you want to be around people and that you can understand people. And it's you making the choice to be around people, which is what you're supposed to do. It's not a boundary or not. It's not a abuse or not thing. It's unconditional love, which is healthy. It's the only kind of love that is healthy. Conditional love is unhealthy. It's abuse. It's when you do not accept everything about a person, which makes them feel like they have to hide themselves. That's emotional abuse. Whenever you make someone else feel, whenever you influence them to feel like they have to hide part of themselves, whether it's good or bad or something else, you know, or acceptable, like autism traits or whatever, you know, anything about a person, whenever they feel like they can't be all of themselves in front of you, that is you being emotionally abusive to them. So it's not acceptable. It's never acceptable to make another person feel like has to need to be hidden from you. And I'm not saying that anyone on the screen is ever going to get this perfectly right. I'm just calling it what it is. So we don't need to say unconditional love is you being abused or me being abused or however. You don't need to call someone else's either emotional abuse that they have towards people or their psychological personality disorder traits or their autism spectrum disorder traits. You don't need to call that boundaries. It's not a boundary. It, either abuse or autism traits or whatever else it is about another person, just call it what it is. It's either abuse or autism or whatever, those kinds of things. It's not a boundary. A boundary is whenever you say yes or no to something that is acceptable. That's what a boundary is. It's a decision at the moment or an impulsive decision or however, it doesn't matter. But it's a boundary whenever you say yes or no to something that is acceptable. Or it's a like or a dislike or deciding not to or deciding to do something at the moment. People need to not legal abuse boundaries. So my hand gets so numb. Okay. Now let's just make this clear a little bit more. So uh Albert over there, across from me here is talking with me and he is, emotionally abusive or whatever else, there is about a person. Now, I don't need to say to him, don't be that way. I can say it's right or wrong to have or be a certain way, or it is acceptable or not acceptable. I don't need to tell him not to be that way. He is allowed to be abusive and not abusive. It's not a boundary I have. I do not have the boundary of you do not be the way you are, whatever that is. That's not a boundary. If I say that's my boundary, I need to sort some things out in my mind. And what all that is or isn't, and because of what, I don't know, but it can get to the close to the line of me being emotionally abusive, and it's not acceptable. You do not tell another person. I'm not saying that there ever isn't an instance where people don't do this or do this. I mean, because we do, but it's emotionally abusive to not accept everything about a person. Let that sink in. Seriously, it's a very important subject. You do not tell another person to not be abusive or have anything about themselves. That's emotional abuse for you to not accept everything about another person because it's conditional. And that's all there is to it. Unconditional and conditional. That's it. There's no other kind of anything. Like love, I mean, let's say. Unconditional love is love. Conditional love is not love. It's abuse. It's when you don't accept everything about a person that is good and bad and whatever else there is. It's not acceptable to give someone conditional love or conditions. It's emotional abuse. You do not tell someone not to be an abusive person because there's tons of things to talk about. Reasons that could be either they've been abused, maybe not. Sometimes the environment, whatever. They were born that way, which is a very serious subject, maybe like psychosis or, psychopathy. Not psychosis, really. I meant psychopathy or, being psychopath, That's a very serious subject to talk about too, which isn't the main subject for this, but it's when you're born with, you know, the inability to, whatever. It's not learned thing like sociopathy is, or antisocial personality disorder traits, or those kinds of things. There's all sorts of things to talk about for this, but there's so many reasons why someone can be abusive or not. You can say we're not supposed to be mean to each other. We're not supposed to be abusive. That's not wrong to say that is right or wrong. The thing is that you do not tell someone not to be. That is not your boundary. You get what I'm saying? I hope so. It's very clear, I think. If not, comment, and I'll try to make it clear for you, because this is not an opinion I have. And this is one reason why I'm a business coach and business consultant, because it's I'm an expert in being a business coach, or different kinds of names for it. Getting to the root of things and understanding people. That's the business coach part of it. The business consultant is more of the business part of it, but they overlap some. So anyway, the business consultant is something that I would want to have more experience in if I'm going to call myself an expert at that part of it, the business part of it, but it is my job. So anyway, and I am good at my job, but the business coach part of it is what I am an expert and I'm not giving you an opinion. Unconditional love is the only kind of love there is. And when you tell a person not to be abusive, you are abusing them emotionally, because you're telling them not to be their whole self. I'm not saying that they're supposed to be abusive or that it's right or that it's not abuse. I'm saying you need to accept people the way they are. And you need to give people unconditional love and understanding, because there is a reason for it. Whether it's, the environment or abuse or whatever it is. I'm not saying you can't contradict yourself sometimes and show someone that you care about them if they're being abused, letting someone abuse them, or don't know that they are, or whatever it is, and someone's using them for their whatever it is that they have. Or I think you need to let people know that you care about them sometimes. I don't think that it's wrong for someone to know that you care about them and see that that's happening. And I think people need to get the fuck over saying that people are trying to save each other, because that's an excuse. And I'm not saying that it can't happen or it doesn't, but that's when it comes to not accepting a person as they are. That's the only kind of saving that there is. Otherwise, giving people unconditional love, that's not saving people. That's the opposite. Conditional is, or conditional love, it's not love. That's when you're trying to save someone, not accept everything about them. Like, save them from being abusive. That doesn't mean give them unconditional love, or that doesn't mean that if you are giving them unconditional love, that's the same thing, because it's not. It's the opposite. Giving them unconditional love is when you're accepting their abusive nature and understanding it and getting to the root of it. Being advice about it if they ask, it's not saving them. That's being a friend or a business coach. You know, if you're not a friend to someone and they're your client, that's not saving them. Or if you stick your nose into your best friend's business and you're having a conversation and you say, this or that about someone using them or they're being abusive or, hey, I was abusive too or whatever, that's a conversation between friends. It's not trying to save people. So anyway, the point is, I don't know if I think I really like making this clear again. Whenever Albert over here, I think I've made it clear enough, but just make sure whenever he has his roots of things, whatever it is, and he's emotionally abusive to me on whatever level it is, or verbally or whatever, that's not a boundary I have. You get what I'm saying? That's not my boundaries. My boundaries are whenever I say yes or no to something acceptable from you or whatever, I generally like to say it's about people, boundaries, relating to each other. But so, anyway, um, when Albert is being abusive, that's not a boundary I have, it's abuse. Call it what it is. But don't tell the person not to be like, I mean, yeah, just don't. Seriously. You can say that they're not supposed to be, but you don't tell them not to be. Once you do that, you're not accepting them. If you need to get away from the person because they're being abusive, that I actually didn't say anything about until this very second. That is a choice that you can make. It's not an unacceptable choice if you want to get away from someone if they are being abusive to you. But it is not a boundary. If you need to come back when there's not an abusive situation going on and you want to discuss you and Albert relating to each other still, you discuss it. You do not tell Albert not to be abusive. You say, you need help, you shouldn't do that, or can I help you? Or if you want to be verbally abusive back, whatever, go ahead, but don't call it something that it isn't. You do not tell Albert not to be. You say, are you aware of this? Do you know why? Can I help you? Do you need support in this? Those kinds of things. You do not jump right on the opportunity to stop what is going on and make our feel unaccepted. You say what I'm saying. You do not cut off the person from being a person. You let them be a person, and you deal with it how you need to be safe. If you feel like you need to be, whatever, but you do not tell Albert not to be the way he is. You see what I'm saying? It's very easy to understand because there's so many details to know about why he could be that way, or if it genuinely is true on purpose abuse from him. It maybe not be. Him interacting with me a certain way, it doesn't always mean it's on purpose abuse. It means it could be, maybe. It could be autism. It, uh, I'm not saying, that abuse is right, like I said, but there are so many things that have so many symptoms and traits, that we need to know about, that you don't need to label you being a victim of someone else. If you feel like you're not strong enough to deal with whatever is going on, then don't deal with it how someone thinks you should. Then deal with it how you think you should, or how you should for yourself. But you do not tell Albert to not be that way. You let them be how they are. Say you should or shouldn't, maybe. That can be a line not to cross too. But if it is in fact abuse, you do not need to say that that person's supposed to do that. You can say they are not supposed to be mean, but you do not tell them not to be and call it your boundary. It's not your boundary what someone else is doing because of themselves, because of their own life, because of roots of things. See what I'm saying? I'm saying that for a point. You get your point. I hope you get what I'm saying. It's very easy. So many people doing stuff so bad and ridiculous. And I'm not saying I'm perfect because I'm not. I'm certainly not perfect with it. And there's so much about me about me being a person, all sorts of things too that make being a person complex. It's not a, uh, it's not a not complex thing to be. It's a very complex thing to be a person. There's so many details about it. So anyway, boundaries are not a person. My boundaries are not Albert being a certain way. That's not a boundary. Albert's allowed to be whatever way he is. It's not a boundary I have. You do not call what he's doing a boundary to. It's just not. If Albert is trying to hit me, that's abuse. If I can't get away from him and he did that, that's abuse. It's not a boundary I have. It's called abuse. That's it. You do not say that you not like me or like him because your head is screwed up. Like years from the boundary because it isn't. You do not call me giving you unconditional love when you're being used in a boundary because it isn't. If you or if you're giving me unconditional love and staying with me and I'm being emotionally abusive to you or something, that is not a boundary. That's a choice to give me unconditional love. It's good to give people unconditional love and understanding. You don't need people who do that to each other. It's not wrong. It's right. If you can't at the moment, then people need to get to the point where they can understand you about it if you're handling and relating to them properly. Which is the deep thing to talk about. But anyway, we all need people in our lives, especially the hurt and abuse of people real, which is from all of us. So I really hope I see good come out of these videos I'm making in my career for people because it's such an important subject to talk about and such a very important thing to relate to people properly about. So anyway, that is all for this video. What a boundary is and isn't is what this video is about. So anyway, but I'll be making more videos soon, and feel free to leave comments on this. I I really want to hear feedback on this and conversations. Really